Good evening or morning or whatever time of the day it happens to be. Welcome welcome all to the Writer's Bleck podcast. I'm your host, Greg Nikas, and this week I am sitting down with author and poet Aida Salazar to talk about her new book, Stream. We'll discuss how poetry became Aida's storytelling superpower, the dangers of screen addiction and social media for young people, reconnecting with nature, culture, and authentic identity, and so much more. Guys, we are at the end of Writer's Bleck Season 2. Our next episode will be our season finale, so please stay tuned. Follow us on social media to find all the details on what's in store for the finale, what is in store for season 3. Keep up with us in the off season, all that good stuff. We are at Writers Black Pod on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. If you're enjoying the Writers Black podcast, consider leaving us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get in touch with us by sending an email to writersblackpod@gmail.com if you want to get involved with the show. We'd love to hear from you guys. All right, housekeeping out of the way, let's get into today's conversation with Aida Salazar. Stream is the third entry in a loosely connected trilogy with some of your earlier works, and they tell this complete and complex story through a really unique device with poetry and telling it through verse. What inspired you to use verse as a vehicle for storytelling to this capacity in these books?
I'm a poet, so it begins there. As a poet, that's one of the ways that I best express myself. Both of the original novels, The Moon Within and Ultraviolet, which their characters were both written originally in verse, and verse is this really interesting way, especially novels in verse, is being able to tell a sequential story through poems is a hybrid way of telling a story, but it's meant to be artful, to do it with a lot of care and a lot of imagery and figurative language and all these different kinds of poetic devices to make the story sing, not only be told but really sing. And that's why I enjoy it so much.
I love that. Where did your love of poetry come from originally?
You know what? When I was in fifth grade, my fifth grade teacher, Mr. Clark, saw that I was a bookworm. And when I graduated fifth grade to go to middle school, he gave me two things. He gave me a Parker pen. Back then, these were special pens that came in a box and you changed it to cartridges. And then he gave me a book by Shel Silverstein called Where the Sidewalk Ends. And that book was my first real, like, fun introduction to poetry. And I started imitating Shel Silverstein with my Parker pen after I went on and all through high school. And actually, all of the way up until graduate school when I read Autobiography of Red. It is by Anne Carson. This book is just a real novel in verse. I went, wait a minute, I could do this. This is what I could do. And so it merged my absolute love of storytelling with my absolute love of poetry. And it's just a perfect union for me.
I think it works really well, especially in this book. I had never seen a full novel in verse before. It's so interesting and like it must like what goes into because obviously when you're writing a book, you plan out like this is where the story ends, this is where it goes, this is all the beats. What is
Right.
the challenge like translating that kind of writing into writing in verse?
Right. Well, so you have less real estate. So you have to be so economic. Every single word has to have do double duty, has to move the story forward, but and describe setting and has to also communicate more than anything what the character is feeling. So poetry gives us this entry into the human emotional landscape in a way that I would argue prose can't, just because it's so brief and because when you say, she was beautiful is a description, but when you say she was as beautiful as a, a roaring river, let's say, right? That then you say, oh my God, she was just like extraordinarily beautiful, right? So that's what the kind of power that poetry does. And so you think about all of those moments. Yes, I'm looking at the beats, I'm looking at the challenges and raising the stakes for the character and all of those things, but I have to think about it in an economical way and in a powerful way, an artful way, because I'm trying to make art. And so that's the kind of thinking that happens when I'm writing.
So for those who haven't picked up Stream yet, what is your elevator pitch?
Stream is this fun novel in verse that it features two characters in two different voices. It alternates between Elio, who is my character from a previous novel called Ultraviolet, and then Sally from a previous novel, The Moon Within. And both of these characters have graduated eighth grade. They're on their way they're at a party and they discover that their friend has gone missing and they think he's dead. But it turns out that he's been catfished on the dark web, and his parents have saved him and pulled him offline. So this like sends the entire community into a well of concern, and the parents go snooping and they discover that Elio has been video gaming obsessively, and that Sally has actually posted a video of herself twerking and has gone viral. And so the parents are like freaking out and they say, we're taking your phones and we're sending you to Mexico to an off the grid rancho where there's no running water, no electricity, and of course, no internet. And so they're in this, I would say, hell, and they have to discover what it is to be authentic, real, and loving again to themselves.
What made you want to return to these characters and put them at the center of this story?
Oh, because Elio is so amazing. He's such a fun character. His voice is really musical and it pops and it's colorful and he sees everything with humor and he can't help it. So my editor Tracy Mack, after I'd written Ultraviolet, she says, "Why don't you hang out a little more with Elio, as your next project, and maybe think about how you can bring in a fuller discussion about." Something that we touched on in that book, which is device use, and I thought, well, that would be fun. But as a creative, I wanted to kind of challenge myself. I've never written a dual perspective novel, and I thought, well, I know somebody else who is kind of like Elio, and who would have like I think a really interesting take on social media, especially because girls um, are disproportionately affected by social media and the influence that can have on them. So I brought them together in this sense.
Technology plays such a big part in our world. Like every aspect of it, it feels like is so bound by technology. What were you hoping to I guess share with young people or help young people think with this book, and why was now the time that you decided to tackle this subject matter?
Well, I have two young children. Well, they're not young anymore, but they're teenagers, and they were experiencing something that was just heartbreaking. Their own addiction or obsession with screens, but also some of their friends who are getting harmed, and that just really kind of came home or was so close to home that I wanted to speak about it because if my kids and other kids in our community are getting affected, what might be happening with kids who don't have as many like protective parents or who don't have as many guardrails? Um, and so, but I, of course, I wanted to do it in a way that was not preachy, in a way that really had compassion for the situation that young people are in. Gen Alpha and Gen Z have had such a difficult way with technology. They're the guinea pigs in many ways of what technology can do to humanity. And so, and because their brains are still developing, there's not, we don't even know the extent to which they are being harmed. And so I wanted to do it in a way that wasn't preachy. I wanted to do it in a way that was fun and that they could relate to and kind of have some self-reflection and think, okay, well, what can I do to make myself more balanced? Not that, you have to get rid of technology, but that you can be a little more balanced and remember to kind of always strive to be your best self and connected to the earth, which is nature, right? And everything around us.
And the themes of nature and just the setting of rural Mexico, they play such an important part, and you've done such a good job at bringing them to life on the page. Why was it important for the story to take place in rural Mexico? And did you find any challenges with exploring that?
Not really. I was born in Mexico, but I was raised in Southeast LA and inner city. And the moments when I would go to Mexico to visit family, we would be exposed to this incredible nature. And of course, I didn't have screens, but whenever I take my children out to the redwoods, I live in Northern California, the redwoods or the ocean, or took them back to our homeland in Mexico, there they were different people. The connection was there, and it just ties to this indigenous across the world, across the globe and history, indigenous idea that we are not disconnected from nature, that we are one. And so putting the children there in that place without their screens, and having them have to look around and feel, literally to touch grass and ground themselves and hug a tree, or get in a stream, um, a different kind of stream, right? Because we're so used to having the stream come this way, and getting into a stream is life changing. And I wanted the young people to experience that, and I didn't have a hard time going there because I had done that myself, and I'd done it with my kids.
What was there a part of the setting or part of your culture and your background that you were excited to bring to the page in this book?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So in the area that I'm from, there is the indigenous people there. Their name is Kashkan, and the Kashkan have been all but wiped away. There are still communities that practice some things like dancing and different rituals, and you see it syncretized in the community. But I really wanted to highlight that there are a lot of ruins that are still not uncovered in that area, where the civilizations before were thriving, and they had, ceremonial centers, and they had a communion with the land and a balance with the land that we've forgotten. And so, Mexican culture is very diverse and very, a big part of it is Spanish culture, because the language is Spanish, and colonization did what it did to erase a lot of these communities. But I was trying to kind of highlight the indigenous aspects of that area in a way that was very dignified, and and helped build the characters. I wanted them to feel empowered by being part of something so beautiful that still survives despite the colonization.
So, writing for middle grade readers can be challenging in any format. Bringing it into verse, however, I imagine comes with its own unique demands, especially for that age group. What were some of the biggest challenges and rewards for writing for the middle grade crowd?
Well, actually, I don't see as many challenges. Well, I guess this is true for all adults who write for children. The challenge is to make sure that the adult is out of the room or out off the page and not preaching. So, to make sure that the characters' voices are speaking, and that they're finding their agency as they should, in an authentic, real to life way. So that's my biggest challenge. But I have so much fun when I write. I don't think about it as a challenge. I think about, like, the inspiration, and I flow. I get so into the characters, to the extent that, like, my husband will walk in, and as I'm crying or laughing, and he's like, "What are you laughing at?" I'm like, "These characters, they're in my head, and I'm having so much fun with them." Or, "This character's, brokenhearted, so let me cry with them." And so, yeah, it's less of a challenge and more of kind of like this, a beautiful opportunity to enter into this stream of consciousness.
So both Celie and Elio are they're at pivotal moments in their lives right now.
Yeah.
And excuse me, at the time of the book.
Yeah.
Did one of their character arcs come more naturally to you, or was one more challenging to write maybe than the other one?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? Yes, I would say that I'm glad that you you noticed, or maybe you asking this question. Elio, the boy, was easier to write because I had just finished his novel. I had just finished writing and editing his novel when I started this one. And so I was still, his voice is still very present. So I had to go back and reread my book that was published, The Moon Within, which was published in 2019. I had to go back and think about and reread it and remember what her voice sounded like, and remember that she would not speak. She is dreamy and lyrical and flowery, and he is like poppy and snappy and witty and like, he's got a different rhythm. And so I had to be very conscious of distinguishing their voices, to the point that if you open the book, Elio is on the right side of the, I'm sorry, on the left side of the page. Like it looks like a poem on the left side of the page, and then Sally appears on the right side of the page. Again, this is a strategy that poets can do because there are no, you're not constrained by the same rules, right? And so making their voices distinct was something that I had up here and had to really work to get right.
I love that. That's brilliant. I hadn't made the connection of how like conscious of a choice that had to have been. That's very smart. So you've mentioned the stream a couple different times in different contexts, obviously. Obviously, stream being the title of the book, but also it can be being interpreted so many different ways throughout the story. Can you break down a little bit what the title means to you and how it connects to the larger themes?
When my children were having trouble, I went on, they had Instagram accounts behind my back, and I finally hacked my way in, and I saw what they were posting, and it was not bad, right? Like what they were posting wasn't bad, but then their feed, what was streaming in, was just so intense. And I had lots of conversations with them, like, look, I don't mind that you use social media, but and it's not what you post as much as what you are intaking. And so this constant streaming of information that informs your self-worth, it informs, um, you know so many aspects, especially when you are that age, and informing your identity, it I think was really damaging. So that's the biggest kind of technological aspect of what the stream means, um, because there's no stopping it. There are some filters, but really we have to be the ones to filter that. And when you're young, you don't have those same kinds of mechanisms to stop it. So there's that. And then of course, the beautiful stream of that exists in this rancho where they are is essential. And without giving it away, the health of the stream is directly tied to the health of the town, and the health of its people, and survival of the people. And so there's meaning there, and how Elio in particular is connected to this stream, and nature is becomes really apparent towards the end of the book. But I won't give it away. And then the other aspect that is not as like perhaps as obvious is that there is a kind of stream of consciousness when you're writing poetry. There's I wanted the poems to stream, to fall, to like flow as easily as possible, for you not to get stopped up, and to really feel like you're inside the head of these characters in an unfiltered way. And so even if they said things that weren't cool, like parents suck or whatever it was, I really wanted that to be. And then there's a couple of moments, I would say, throughout the book where, as Elio appears on the left and Celia appears on the right, there are moments when their individual streams kind of come together on the same page. And so that is kind of a metaphor, or an example of what it is to coalesce and have the same thought as somebody else, and same feelings, and be affected in the same way by a loss or an experience.
When readers close this book, what is the one thing that you hope stays with them?
I want readers to have fun, right? To know, wow, that was a fun story. To That was a dramatic story. To be titillated by the drama in it. Um, but also, I think kind of on a more deeper level, I want them to remember their source. In the dedication of the book, I dedicated it to both my kids and to the brilliant children of this generation. And I asked them to never forget their source, and their source being this connection to nature and land and environment. That nature is one with them, and that being your like literally your most authentic self and your freest and most natural way is is something I think that a lot of us are forgetting and or never were taught, because babies as little as like 5 months old, a year old, they're putting screens in front of their faces instead of sitting them on the grass and grounding. So that's the hope that they remember who they are in the most authentic and real way.
So I guess wrapping up then, my last question I kind of ask everyone. I'm always curious what the answers are going to be. What is one question that you always wish that someone would ask you, be it about your work or your career overall, or you personally, that you always want someone to ask but they never do?
You know what people don't ask is um, is if I write for adults. A lot of people just assume that I write for young people, all exclusively, which I publish mostly for young people. But I do have this very adult voice and very many ideas that I'd like to communicate um, in the adult sphere that I haven't been able to get to yet. But yeah, so maybe that.
Aida, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. You've been such a delight to talk to. Where can people go to find the books, to find more from you, and all the cool things that you're doing?
Okay. Well, you can find Stream at any indie. You can order it or you can find it online anywhere books are sold. And you can follow me on Instagram or and other social media. I'm not as active on others, but at Aida underscore writes. And you can also find me on my website and send me a message through there. And it's
Fant-
just my name, aidasalazar.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Greg, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your thoughtful questions.
Thank you. All right, guys. Writer's Bleck will be back on Monday, June 22nd with our season 2 finale. Please follow along with us on social media to find out what's in store for that episode. We are at Writers Bleck Pod on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. Leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts if you're enjoying the show. Even if you're not, let us know what we could be doing better for season 3, because we're ramping up. We're barreling towards it. We're gonna get there, and it's gonna be great. And we'll know all the things we got to change, because you'll tell us, and you'll be very nice and respectful about it. It'll be a blast. And if you want to get involved with the show or get ahead on the guest queue for season 3, send an email to writersblackpod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you guys. Thank you once again to Aida Salazar for joining us on the show this week. Please go check out her book Stream and all of her other works. It was a lovely conversation, and I really enjoyed speaking with her. Thank you, all of you, to sticking around and listening to the episode. And until next time, guys, I've been Greg. You've been awesome, and keep writing.